So eventually they stop at a rest stop, and Charlie gets out to use the restroom, and inside the bathroom there is a map where it shows where you are. I don't remember exactly how she did it, but basically she realized that the timing would have been off for that song to have been on, and for her to only have been hallucinating for 5 to 10 minutes. They've traveled too far for her to have only been out for that long. So, once again, she is extremely suspicious of Josh. She ends up hiding in one of the bathroom stalls, and all of a sudden there is another person who comes in to the restroom, and they start pushing on every stall door. And Charlie's like, oh shit, it's Josh, it's time, he's gonna murder me now. And so when the person gets to Charlie's door, they open it up, and it's actually another woman. Charlie naturally comes off as an absolute psychopath while she's trying to beg this girl to take her with her in her car. She's saying, please, you have to help me. I am scared of this man that I am driving with. He is a serial killer. He's definitely a serial killer, and he's going to murder me. And the girl is thrown off and taken aback, and immediately just assumes that Charlie is drunk. And she's like, well, what proof do you have that he's a serial killer, blah, blah, blah. And Charlie's like, I don't have any proof. I just know. And that's not how I would play that, actually. First of all, the other girl is a bitch, because if somebody, I don't care who it is, if somebody is begging you for help, why would you not just take their word for it and help them? Like, why would you walk away? So, besides the fact that that girl is a bitch, Charlie doesn't help the situation, grabbing on to the girl's arm, saying, like, you have to take me with you. So the girl gets really freaked out. The girl leaves the bathroom. I guess on the way out, tells Josh, hey, that girl you're traveling with, you need to be careful of her, because she's pretty drunk and I don't want you to get hurt. So yeah, that's definitely not how I would have played that. If I were Charlie and this bitch asked me for proof that the man, she's like, do you have any proof? I would have just said yes. Yes, I have all the proof, and I will show you all the proof once we get in your car. Let me check my notes. So after this, we are treated to some Josh perspective, and it turns out he is lying, and he is trying to keep Charlie in the car. We don't know why yet, but it seems pretty nefarious. They did play 20 questions, and he almost blew his cover because he was just curious as to how she would react when she realized that he was thinking of a tooth. He wanted to scare her, I guess. That was pretty dumb, wasn't it? It was pretty stupid of you, Josh Baxter. Then we also find out he is hiding handcuffs and things. I want to say there's a knife or a gun or something. Handcuffs are the main thing that we need to know is what he's hiding in the trunk. Anyway, so let's continue gaslighting to Nirvana. Charlie gets back in the car, and after a little while, there's a billboard for a diner in the Poconos. And Josh decides that he wants to stop there for some food. Man, I'm out of breath. Doesn't have anything to do with this, or the fact that I'm getting pretty drunk. So they stop at the diner, and Charlie decides that she is going to use this opportunity to use the payphone and call the police. So she excuses herself, she goes outside, picks up the payphone, dials 911, and just as the operator is saying, you know, what is your emergency, Josh Baxter followed her out. So he's like trying to listen in on her conversations. So she panics and she hangs up, and she's like, oh, I was just trying to call my boyfriend. And he's like, oh, but she didn't say anything. She's like, well, yeah, he didn't pick up. And he's like, well, aren't you gonna try again? And she's like, no, it was my last quarter. And so he's like, oh, here's a quarter. Call your boyfriend. And so She does. She calls Robbie. He answers. It's like 3 in the morning or something like that. He answers his phone, and she uses the code phrase, "Things took a detour." And so he immediately like freaks out, and he's like, "You're joking." And she's like, "No, I'm not joking." And he's like, "Well, where are you at?" And she's like, "Oh," she's trying to play it off, and she's like, "Oh, we're in this cute little diner in the Poconos. This is what it's called. Da da da. Please send help." So as Robbie's panicking and still trying to get information out of her, she hangs up the phone and goes back into the diner. So now we're treated to an incredibly pointless bit of the chapter where we are in Robbie's point of view. And if I'm remembering correctly, this is the only time where we're in his point of view. Felt like it was completely pointless because all it is he decides to call the police out there, tell them where she's at, ask them to please check in on her, and then he decides to get in his car and drive to the Poconos at 3 a.m. And that's it. Which, I mean, I feel like we could have guessed that, probably. Like, I assume that if your loved one called you and told you that you would do the same thing. You know what I mean? Next, we switch to the point of view of Marge, the waitress at the diner. She is concerned because she thinks that Charlie looks very scared of Josh, and she would feel guilty if she didn't try to do anything about it to make sure that she was okay. And then there's this whole paragraph about how pointy Marge's elbows are, and how she uses them to spill Charlie's tea on her fancy red coat that she stole from her dead best friend. Next, Marge takes Charlie into the bathroom to clean her up and ask if she's okay. Charlie insists that she's fine, and then it kind of switches back to Charlie's point of view, and she's like, "What do I do? Do I say what's going on? Do I tell her? Or do I just keep her out of it because I want to keep her safe?" Then Marge says something like, "There's a special place in hell for women who don't help out other women. Like, we gotta look out for each other," kind of thing. And that really hits Charlie pretty hard. And she decides that she's going to be an absolute badass about this thing. She is going to go out there and, I guess, basically kill Josh before he can kill any other women, is what she decides. So she's got her game face on. She's like, "Nope, I'm tough. I can handle this. Let's go kill a person." But yeah, it really hit Charlie pretty hard. She's feeling really guilty because she felt like she could have saved Maddie and she didn't. I guess because of that guilt, that's why we figure out, like, that's why Charlie kind of wanted to go on this trip with a complete stranger, because she wanted to endanger herself because she felt guilty. So Charlie marches out of that restroom. She walks right up to the jukebox and she plays "Come As You Are" by Nirvana one last time, just so he knows that she knows that he is lying to her, which I thought was another cool badass moment. I really liked that. So when she gets back to the table, Josh goes, "Look, you obviously don't trust me. You're obviously scared. I don't want to do this anymore, so how about you just stay here? I'll just get in my car and go, and you don't have to come with me." And he's like, "I know that you were speaking in some sort of code to your boyfriend." And Charlie is basically like, "Oh no, you're not getting rid of me that easily. We're getting in that fucking car, and you're gonna take me with you." At this point, a cop car pulls into the parking lot of the diner. When Josh sees this, he calls Marge over for her to take a break for a minute and come and sit with them and chat. When the cop walks in, he begins asking everybody if they're all right. He explains that he got a phone call about a potentially dangerous man holding a woman hostage. Josh insists they're fine, and then the cop turns his attention to Charlie, asking if she's sure everything is fine. What the cop doesn't see is that Josh has secretly taken his knife from his food and has set it over here to the side, and he's just staring at Charlie, pointing the knife at Marge. Basically, like, everything's okay, right? And Charlie, who doesn't want to get Marge involved, doesn't want her to get hurt, says yes, everything is fine, we're fine, you can go. So Marge shoos away the cop, and Charlie and Josh pay their tab. They drink way too much. They pay their bill and begin to leave, and Marge is like, oh, Charlie, you forgot your backpack over there. And so Charlie's like, oh, silly me. She walks back over, grabs her backpack, and what Josh doesn't see is she takes the steak knife that he had set back on the table and tucks it into her backpack. So they're driving, and Josh is just like, so, how much do you know? And Charlie's like, I know everything. I know all of it. Josh tosses her a pair of handcuffs and insists that she needs to put them on, or he will put them on for her. Charlie cries. They hit a deer, so Josh stops the car, and there's a struggle. And then Charlie stabs Josh in the gut. After that, Charlie gets out of the car and runs all the way back to the diner. So Marge is still there, so she lets Charlie in. She unlocks the door, lets Charlie in, and Charlie says, I just killed him. I just killed someone. Please help me and call the police. So Marge is like, oh, okay, I'll do that. Give me a second and I'll go get the phone in the back. Or I'll go use the phone in the back. No cell phones. It's 1991. I'm losing my goddamn mind. And so as Charlie is watching, like, out the window to make sure that Josh is not following her, a rag is pressed up like this against her face, and she passes out. Big twist. So here's where the book starts to go a little crazy. Charlie wakes up tied to a chair in the back of the diner with Marge staring down at her with one of those cute little tiny guns pointed at her. I don't know what they're called, but they're adorable and tiny. I think they said it was a Derringer? I don't know. I don't know what any of the words mean. So Charlie is gagged by a filthy dish rag, and she can't even ask her what the fuck is going on. And immediately the woman sees a car's headlights pulling into the diner. So at first Charlie's like, oh fuck, it's Josh. He's back to finish me off, and they're working together. And then she hears Robbie's voice calling her name. Marge gets rid of him by telling him that the couple left and she was back in the kitchen, so she didn't see where they were going. And then Robbie's like, well, did they say where they were going at all? And then Marge says, no, they didn't say where they were going. They just said goodbye as they were paying their bill, and then they left. Robbie immediately picks up on this inconsistency, but decides to play along, and he's like, oh, okay, well, thank you anyway. And he walks away. Goes back out into the parking lot and quietly smashes one of Marge's rear lights. Not the headlights, the back lights. Brake lights. He smashes one of her brake lights and waits in his car, and with the brake light being out, that's going to make her easier to follow, I guess, is what he's doing. So soon enough, Marge is forcing Charlie to stand up and walk out to her car. So Marge chloroforms Charlie again and then brings her out to this old abandoned lodge in the middle of the woods. So finally Charlie is like, oh my god, are you working with Josh? And Marge is like, oh no, Josh works for me. And this is supposed to be the big old twist. She goes on to explain that she's not going to kill Charlie. She just wants to ask her a few questions about her dead granddaughter. This leads to my favorite dialogue in the entire book, where Charlie gasps and she just goes, you're Mima. And I can't even tell you how much I hate it so much, and how I just keep repeating it all the time in my head and out loud and to other people. It's just played so seriously. Charlie's like, why are you doing this? You know that you're gonna get in trouble, blah blah blah. And Mima's like, well, I have terminal cancer, so I've got nothing to lose, and I want to find out what happened to my granddaughter. And Mima tries to yank one of Charlie's teeth out of her head with pliers. Just sort of like vengeance for Maddie, I guess, kind of a thing. She's basically going to try to torture her until she remembers something. So she's fighting with Charlie and the Pliers when who should appear to save her? Josh. Josh comes in to save her. He had stitched up his knife wound and followed them out there. So there's another big struggle, and Charlie manages to free herself from the chair, but not before Josh gets shot in the gut. So now he has a knife wound and a gunshot wound in his belly. So that is probably a super fun time. Then there's this big chase through the lodge. Charlie hallucinates. Robbie shows up and is immediately shot in the arm. Somehow there's this big fire that starts and it's like burning down the lodge and stuff. And so Charlie has this powerful heart-to-heart talk with Mima. She's telling Mima, you know, Maddie wouldn't have wanted this. She would have wanted us to get along and like each other because we're her two favorite people in the entire world. So then Mima gets sad and then lets them leave and stays there to die in the lodge fire, I guess. Or shoot herself or something. I can't remember. Basically, she's just ready to die right then. She's like, go, whatever, just leave me to die. So anyway, since Robbie's arm is fucked, that means that Charlie has to drive his car. So as they're driving down, Charlie panics and she almost crashes right into a lake. All of the bumping and the jostling in the car causes Robbie's glove box to pop open and a small little ring box to pop out. So it lands by Charlie, and she's like, oh my god, I've been such an asshole to this dude, and all he wants to do is love me. He was so sweet to come and rescue me. All I've been is a complete douchebag to him. And apparently he was going to ask me to marry him. So she picks it up, she picks up the ring box, and you know where this is going. She opens it up, and there are 3 teeth inside. Yes, that's right. Robbie is the campus killer. So then Robbie goes on about how he would never ever hurt Charlie, and, you know, she's different and special. She's better than all those other girls, and just goes on and on. Charlie then remembers the promise that she made to herself about, from now on, helping other women. Charlie remembers the promise that she made about not allowing the killer to hurt anyone else. And with that, she plows directly through the wooden guardrail and into the lake. With that, she handcuffs Robbie's arm to the steering wheel of the vehicle. She had swiped the handcuffs earlier from Josh. So she handcuffs him to the car, and then she makes a break for it. She swims out to the surface. After all of this, there's this, like, touching little hospital scene when Charlie arrives to visit Josh and Marge. Then all of a sudden the credits roll and the lights turn on. So the director turns to the real Charlie and is like, so what do you think? Charlie says it was great, even though, you know, they changed a bunch of things. For instance, in the movie version of Charlie's experience, they kept Marge alive. Alive and reformed for this happy ending, but the real Marge just fucking died in that fire. So Charlie lies, says that she liked it, and excuses herself to go meet up with her boyfriend, Josh, who is now a hotshot music producer or something. That's the end. So basically, the entire book was just a movie version of the events that actually took place in Charlie's life. Yeah. The end. So here are the things that I liked about the book. I liked that Sager throws The Cure and Susie and the Banshees in there. I was real excited. I also thought, again, the scene where they played 20 questions was played, it was written very well. I liked that we were figuring out what the item was along with Charlie, and we were sort of asking ourselves the same questions. Felt like we were playing the game ourselves, and I thought that was really cool. I thought it was really chilling when we found out that the item was a tooth. So that was probably my favorite scene. Other than, you know, Charlie deciding that she's a badass now and walking up to that jukebox. Things I didn't like. I thought the ending was very dumb. Yeah, that's about it. So if I had to give this book a rating, I don't know. It was fun. It was an easy read, despite the stupid ending. You know, I guess if I had to rate it, I would rate it 3 out of 5 Mimas. Thank you guys for watching. If you did, next week I will be talking again about 4 to 5 books that I've read in the month of December. Bye!